So, Kate Dodsworth, thank you ever so much for joining us today here at the Eastlight Resident Academy. Could you begin by introducing yourself for us, please?
Hi, I'm Kate Dodsworth. I'm Director of Consumer Regulation at the Regulator for Social Housing.
So, first question, two parts. What is consumer regulation and what is the Regulator for Social Housing?
Consumer regulation for us covers the things that matter to tenants around landlord services. So things like repairs, complaints, satisfaction, the neighbourhood, antisocial behaviour, those things that tenants are talking to us about and no doubt you about on a regular basis. And the Regulator for Social Housing is the body that regulates all social landlords in England, just England, and makes sure that they meet rules that we set, which make sure they're kind of financially able, well run, and now changes coming along the line to make sure that they meet what tenants want in terms of repairs and satisfaction.
And it's a relatively newish organisation in its current form with some relatively newish powers. Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's come through various iterations. I've been in the social housing sector for about 30 years, so I remember the old Housing Corporation, and some of your tenants and colleagues might remember that, and Homes and Communities Agency, Tenant Satisfaction Authority. But 4 years ago, a standalone regulator was created. It split up the investment in housing and the regulation, and we are the Regulator for Social Housing. So we're just over 4 years now. And
that's quite important, isn't it, I think, because you regulate at an organisational level rather than, say, an individual level. So if an individual's got a complaint about a repair hasn't been done or something like that, that's less what you're concerned with. You're more concerned with how housing associations are run, really.
That's absolutely right. So the Housing Ombudsman exists for individual complaints from tenants, and we regulate the whole organisation, so at that level, and we would work through boards, or in the case of local authorities, because they will come under our scope with the changes that we'll talk about in a moment, local councillors, but we will regulate through that top body. I suppose for us as the regulator, at the moment we do our in-depth assessments and we give a bit of notice to people that we're coming along. We'll pull down the lamp on the chief executive and the chair and ask them a set of questions. We'll send off the documents in advance, and then we'll go away and make our judgments.
And so these are IDAs, so-called, which I know put the fear of God in some boards across the... Perhaps tell us just a bit more about them. What's their purpose and how do they work?
Sure, I can tell you about that, not least because I've been on the other side of it. Before I was with the regulator 18 months ago, I was latterly running a housing association in the East End. I don't think I slept for about 3 months before the in-depth assessment happened. But that is where the regulator will say, on a programme basis, we are coming to see you, we're going to ask you some questions, we'll give you some notice, send off the documents. At the moment, that covers the governance and the economic side of housing associations. So basically, it's making sure that they are financially well run. And I think that's right, because no one wants a landlord to go belly up financially, and it makes sure that the board are in control and running that organisation really well against their mission and purpose. So at the moment, that is the focus of the in-depth assessment.
And so you have these things at the moment called G ratings and V ratings, which stand for governance and viability, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
And that's just it's basically a grading system for those two things you're talking about.
Absolutely, it's just a grading system. And when we come out with our design and our programme for how we will inspect on the consumer side, we don't yet know what the grading system is going to be for that. We're too early. But when we come out the other end, we will have a sort of system for understanding how well an organisation is performing on those areas like repairs, satisfaction, complaints, antisocial behaviour, the things that tenants are telling us are really important to them.
But it has kind of considerable impact for people. So if you get a poor V rating, say, if you get a 2 or even lower than that, it impacts your ability to borrow on the markets, all these kind of things. Like it sets a real precedent for how organisations operate.
Absolutely right. It's really, really important. And I go back to my point about losing sleep earlier. It's really important that you get things right. It's really important for tenants up and down the country living in over 4 million social homes in England. It's really important for them that landlords are economically viable, financially well run, and that consumer issues are being looked at and the landlords are run sort of really well.
Can you give us an example? So, I mean, you know, not presuming that things are absolutely awful and people have spent all the money and the governance is nowhere, but, you know, fairly well-run organisation. What kind of things should they be thinking about to make sure that their governance is really good?
Well, I think there's a number of things. I think we all know for housing associations, for instance, that boards run those housing associations, and they'll have to cover a number of different areas. That rents are set according to how the government says they should be, that their services are delivering value for money. After all, some of this is taxpayers' money, and that needs to be spent well and wisely, using tenants' rents in accordance with how it should be spent. And boards really need to have oversight of those things that make landlord services really, really good. So at the moment, we're saying in preparation for our changed remit on the consumer side, it's boards who've really got to have a dashboard of data that tells them what it's like for a tenant living in their home. So at the moment, they might have a dashboard that tells them what's the health and safety compliance like. Absolutely right. We want homes to be safe. Mm-hmm. They'll have a dashboard that tells them what the finance is like. Absolutely right. As I said before, we don't want to see anyone go belly up. But they need a dashboard to understand what things are like for tenants. So that will mean having really good data on the condition of the homes that a landlord has, really good data on their tenants. I don't mean in an intrusive way, but I mean, you know, are there groups of tenants who are less satisfied than others? Are there messages and themes coming through tenant complaints that are really important? What is it that boards need to have really clear data on to make sure that they're running good services for tenants? Because they're in control, they set the culture, and it's really important that they have a clear line of sight to how living in homes are for the tenants.
So, I mean, one of the best ways to get the view of what it's like to live in those homes, presumably, is what we're trying to do at Eastlight, which is get more residents involved in our governance and on our boards. Is that something that the regulator supports broadly, or?
Yeah, I mean, as a regulator that regulates the organisation, we are outcome focused. So we won't tell landlords exactly how to do it. Landlords have got to find their way. But one of the important things to demonstrate and give us evidence of is that tenants are able to influence the services that affect them. So one way of doing that is through a really good resident governance structure. Tenants on boards, an active tenant scrutiny committee or similar. And we would want to see evidence that those resident governance structures are able to influence the things that matter to them through the board.
So my last question, really, we're asking everyone this, is from your perspective, from the perspective of the regulator of social housing, if you were a resident who is interested, wants to get more involved in the organisation and the governance of their landlord, but doesn't really know where to start with boards and all of that, what's the kind of the one thing that you, from a regulation perspective, want them to be thinking about?
I think it's about helping boards and teams and landlords really see clearly to what it is like being a tenant at that landlord. I say it again and again, but I think that's really important, because otherwise, how do you know, as a board or a landlord team, how do you know what it's like unless tenants are there to tell you, actually, this isn't working for us very well, or this is working and this is my experience. I think, again, you know, without my regulatory hat on, having worked in the sector for a long time, I'm a real cheerleader for tenant involvement, and I think the conditions need to be right for that involvement. You need to know something is going to change if you're going to give up your time freely, and so many tenants do, and it adds such value to the sector. You need to know something's going to change as a result, and you need that really clear and transparent data, and have mature conversations with your landlord. And then I think it's really worthwhile. And I think tenants working in this sort of space will really help drive those changes that we want to see and will want to get evidence of.
Kate Dodsworth, Director of Consumer Regulation, the Regulator for Social Housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.